The blood on Hannah Turner's hands had dried by the time she reached the weathered oak tree, her mother's favorite spot. The Arizona desert stretched endlessly around her, the unforgiving July sun of 1876 beating down mercilessly on her shoulders as she clutched the leather-bound Bible to her chest. Mineral Park, once bustling with prospectors and dreamers, had grown quiet in recent years as the silver mines began to yield less and less. But Hannah had known no other home, and now, with her mother gone, she felt more alone than the solitary oak on this barren hillside. "Mama," she whispered, her voice catching as she slid down against the rough bark. "I don't know how to do this without you." The Bible fell open in her lap, its pages worn from years of daily reading. The blood that had stained Hannah's hands after holding her mother through those final moments had left faint rusty marks on the edge of the pages. Tears began to stream down her face, falling onto the delicate paper, blurring the ink of passages her mother had read to her since childhood. She didn't hear the approaching hoofbeats over her own sobs, didn't notice the tall figure dismounting from his horse until his shadow fell across her. "Pardon me, miss," a deep voice said gently. "I don't mean to intrude." Hannah looked up, hastily wiping her tears with the back of her hand. The man before her stood well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the bright sky. His face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see kind eyes studying her with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm fine," Hannah lied, closing the Bible and holding it protectively. The stranger's gaze fell to the book in her hands. "That looks like it's been well loved," he remarked. Hannah nodded, fresh tears threatening. "It was my mother's. She passed yesterday." The man removed his hat, revealing tousled auburn hair and a face younger than she'd expected, perhaps only a few years older than her own 22 years. "I'm mighty sorry to hear that, miss," he hesitated, then gestured to the Bible. "I couldn't help but notice. You were crying over your mother's Bible. Would you mind if I read a verse with you? Sometimes the right words can bring comfort when nothing else will." Something in his gentle tone broke through Hannah's wall of grief. She looked up at the stranger, really looked at him for the first time, and saw nothing but sincerity in his expression. "I'm not sure what would help right now," she admitted. "May I?" he asked, holding out his hand. When she hesitated, he added, "My name's Adam Nathans, by the way. I've just arrived in Mineral Park." Hannah reluctantly handed over the Bible. "Hannah Turner." Adam sat down beside her, leaving a proper distance between them as he carefully opened the Bible. "My ma always turned to the Psalms when her heart was heavy," he said, thumbing through the pages. His fingers stopped at Psalm 34, and his voice took on a soothing cadence as he read. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit," he read, his voice steady and warm like the desert sun. Hannah closed her eyes, letting the familiar words wash over her. When he finished reading, they sat in silence for a moment. Hannah's tears had slowed, though the ache in her chest remained. "Thank you, Mr. Nathans," she said finally. "Adam," he corrected with a gentle smile, "and it's the least I could do. I know what it's like to lose someone you love." Hannah studied him more carefully now. His clothes were travel-worn but good quality. A gun belt hung at his hip, the leather polished and well-maintained. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, a clear hazel that seemed to hold both kindness and sorrow. "What brings you to Mineral Park?" she asked, welcoming the distraction from her grief. "There's not much silver left in these hills." "I'm not chasing silver," Adam replied, handing the Bible back to her with care. "I'm looking for work. I've been hired as the new deputy." Hannah's eyebrows rose slightly. "Sheriff Wilson finally got the town council to approve help," Adam nodded. "From what I understand, there's been trouble with rustlers hitting the outlying ranches." "The McAllister place was hit hard last month," Hannah confirmed. "My father's ranch has been spared so far, but—" "Your father has a ranch?" Adam asked. "The Double T west of town. My father started it before I was born." Her voice faltered. "My mother never fully took to ranch life, but she loved my father enough to make her peace with it." Adam stood and offered his hand to help her up. "It's getting late, Miss Turner. May I escort you back to town? Or to your ranch?" Hannah hesitated. Her father would be drowning his grief in whiskey by now, and the thought of returning to a house without her mother's presence was unbearable. "To town, if you don't mind. I'm staying at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house until after the funeral." As they walked toward his horse, a magnificent chestnut gelding, Adam kept a respectful distance. "I'm sorry we had to meet under such circumstances, Miss Turner." "Hannah," she corrected, offering a small, sad smile. "And thank you for the verse, Mr. Nathans." "Adam, my mother would have appreciated it." Adam helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her, keeping a proper distance as they rode toward town. The desert had begun to cool as evening approached, and Hannah found herself grateful for the stranger's quiet presence at her back, a momentary shelter from the storm of grief threatening to overwhelm her. Little did she know that this chance meeting under the oak tree would be the first of many, and that the auburn-haired deputy with the gentle voice would soon become as essential to her life as the very air she breathed. The funeral for Elizabeth Turner drew most of Mineral Park's 300 residents. Hannah stood beside her father, James Turner, a once imposing figure now diminished by grief and whiskey. She felt Adam's presence before she saw him, standing respectfully at the back of the gathered mourners, hat in hand. Pastor Miller spoke of Elizabeth's kindness, her unwavering faith, and her love for her family. Hannah barely heard the words through the roaring in her ears. Her mother was gone. The woman who had read Bible stories to her every night, who had taught her to bake bread and mend clothes, and hold her head high no matter what life threw at her, gone. When it was over, people filed past to offer condolences. Hannah accepted their words with mechanical nods, barely registering their faces until Adam stood before her. "Miss Turner," he said softly, "your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Hannah managed, grateful for the simple acknowledgement. James Turner, who had been silent throughout most of the service, looked up sharply. "Who are you?" he demanded, his words slightly slurred. "Adam Nathans, sir, the new deputy. I just arrived in town yesterday." James narrowed his eyes. "Another man with a badge and a gun, that's all we need." He turned away dismissively, accepting a flask from one of the ranch hands. "Please excuse my father," Hannah said quietly. "He's not himself today." Adam nodded. "No apology needed. Grief affects us all differently." As people began to disperse, Hannah found herself reluctant to return to Mrs. Peterson's boarding house. The thought of sitting alone in that small room with nothing but her thoughts for company was unbearable. "Is there somewhere you need to be, deputy?" she asked impulsively. Adam seemed surprised by the question. "I'm due to meet Sheriff Wilson later this afternoon, but I have some time. Would you walk with me, just for a little while?" Hannah knew it was forward of her to ask, especially on the day of her mother's funeral, but she couldn't bear to be alone. Adam offered his arm. "I'd be honored." They walked in silence through the dusty streets of Mineral Park. The town had grown haphazardly around the silver mines, with Main Street lined by false-fronted buildings housing the essentials. The general store, a bank, 2 saloons, the sheriff's office, and various other businesses. Beyond that were scattered homes and the newer additions like the small schoolhouse where Hannah taught the town's children. "How long have you been teaching?" Adam asked when she mentioned her profession. 3 years now." "It's not much of a school, just one room with children of all ages, but it's important work." "I imagine you're quite good at it." Hannah glanced at him. "What makes you say that? You have a patient way about you, patient but strong." Adam's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. Important qualities for dealing with a roomful of children. Their walk took them to the edge of town, where the wild desert reclaimed the land. In the distance, the mountains rose purple against the sky. "Will you return to teaching soon?" Adam asked. "In a week or so." The children need structure, especially after something like this. Death frightens them. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself. "It frightens me too, if I'm being honest." Adam was quiet for a moment. "My father died when I was 15, he said finally. "Shot during a bank robbery in Colorado. I remember thinking the world had tilted on its axis, that nothing would ever be right again." Hannah looked at him. "Did it get right again? Not the same kind of right, but eventually a different kind." He met her gaze. "The pain doesn't go away, but it changes. Becomes something you can carry." They turned back toward town as the sun began its descent. When they reached Mrs. Peterson's boarding house, Hannah found herself reluctant to part company. "Thank you, Adam, for the walk and the words." "It was my pleasure, Hannah," he hesitated. "I hope we'll meet again soon, though under happier circumstances." "I'd like that," she replied, surprising herself with her sincerity. That night, alone in her room, Hannah opened her mother's Bible again. A pressed wildflower fell from between the pages, a desert marigold, her mother's favorite. She thought of Adam reading to her under the oak tree, his voice steady and reassuring, and for the first time since her mother's death, the crushing weight of grief seemed just a little lighter. The following week passed in a blur of condolence visits and practical matters. Hannah's father retreated to the ranch, leaving her to handle most of the arrangements. She caught occasional glimpses of Adam around town, but their paths didn't properly cross again until she returned to the schoolhouse. Hannah had just dismissed her students for the day when she looked up to find Adam leaning against the doorframe. "Deputy Nathan's," she said, surprised. "Miss Turner." He smiled, stepping into the one-room schoolhouse. "I was passing by and thought I'd see how you're faring." Hannah gathered her books, aware of her quickened pulse. "Better, I think. Teaching helps, it leaves little time for dwelling on sadness." Adam nodded, looking around the modest room with its rows of desks and slate board. "It's a fine thing you're doing here." "It's not much compared to schools back east, but we make do." Hannah hesitated. "Would you like some tea? Mrs. Peterson always has a pot brewing." Adam's expression brightened. "I'd be honored." They walked together to the boarding house, drawing curious glances from townspeople. Hannah was acutely aware that being seen with the handsome new deputy would start tongues wagging, but found she didn't much care. Over tea in Mrs. Peterson's parlor, with the landlady discreetly but definitely present in the adjoining room, Hannah learned more about Adam. He'd been a deputy in 3 different towns since turning 18, working his way west. His mother still lived in Denver with his younger sister. He preferred coffee to tea but would never say so to their hostess, and when he smiled, really smiled, a small dimple appeared in his right cheek. "Why Mineral Park?" Hannah asked. "The mines are playing out. Most people are leaving, not arriving. Sheriff Wilson's an old friend of my former boss. When he wrote asking for help with the rustling problem, it seemed like good timing. My last position had become complicated." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Complicated?" Adam looked down at his teacup. "The mayor's daughter had taken a shine to me. The mayor did not approve." Hannah couldn't help but laugh. "So you fled west to escape matrimony?" Adam's eyes met hers, surprisingly serious. "I fled west because I believe a man shouldn't marry unless his heart is fully engaged. Hers wasn't. Neither was mine." Something warm unfurled in Hannah's chest at his words. Before she could respond, Mrs. Peterson bustled in with a fresh pot of tea, effectively changing the subject. As summer wore on, Hannah found herself looking forward to Adam's visits. He often walked her home from the schoolhouse or appeared at church on Sundays to sit beside her. They spoke of books they had read, of his patrols around the county, of her students' progress. What began as comfort in the wake of her mother's death gradually transformed into something deeper, something that made Hannah's heart race whenever she caught sight of his tall figure approaching. But shadows remained. Her father sank deeper into his whiskey bottle, neglecting the ranch. Hannah split her time between teaching and riding out to the Double T, trying to keep things running with the help of the foreman, Miguel Vasquez. The rustlers grew bolder, hitting ranches closer to town. And Hannah couldn't escape the feeling that something was holding Adam back from declaring his increasingly obvious feelings for her. The answer came on a sweltering August afternoon. Hannah had stayed late at the schoolhouse, preparing lessons for the following week, when Adam appeared at the door. His expression was grave. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "There's been another rustling at the McAllister place, but this time there was shooting. One of their hands was killed." Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. "That's terrible. Poor Mr. McAllister." Adam nodded grimly. "Sheriff Wilson and I are organizing a posse to track them. We think they're hiding out in the hills to the north." He hesitated. "Hannah, there's something else." The serious tone in his voice made her stomach tighten. "What is it?" "I rode out to the Double T earlier today. Your father." Adam chose his words carefully. He wasn't in a good state. Miguel asked me to tell you that they need supplies and that your father has been difficult with the men. Hannah sighed deeply. I'll ride out first thing tomorrow. Thank you for telling me. Adam stepped closer. Hannah, I'm worried about you, trying to manage the school and the ranch, all while grieving your mother. It's too much for one person. What choice do I have? She asked, fatigue evident in her voice. My father can't or won't handle things, and the ranch is our livelihood. You could sell it, Adam suggested gently. There are still buyers looking for established ranches, even with the rustling problems. The Double T is my home, Hannah protested. It's all I have left of my parents, of our family. You're what's left of your family, Adam said quietly, taking her hands in his. The ranch is just land and cattle. Hannah pulled away. Easy for you to say. You've spent your life moving from town to town. Some of us put down roots. Hurt flashed across Adam's face. That's not fair, Hannah. Isn't it? How long will you stay in Mineral Park, Adam? Until the rustlers are caught, until another sheriff offers you a job, until another mayor's daughter catches your eye. The moment the words left her mouth, Hannah regretted them. Adam's expression closed off, his jaw tightening. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean you did, Adam interrupted, his voice cool, and perhaps you're right to question it. I haven't given you any reason to believe I'd stay. He stepped back, replacing his hat. I should go, the posse leaves at dawn. Hannah wanted to call him back, to apologize properly, but pride and exhaustion kept her silent as she watched him walk away. The posse was gone for 5 days. 5 days during which Hannah alternated between worry for Adam's safety and anger at herself for pushing him away. She rode out to the Double T and found conditions even worse than Adam had implied. Her father was barely coherent, the bunkhouse was running low on supplies, and Miguel confided that 3 of the hands were talking of quitting. Hannah used money from her teaching salary to purchase the needed supplies and spent 2 days at the ranch, trying to restore order. She convinced the hands to stay with promises of prompt payment, cleaned the main house which had fallen into squalor, and tried without success to reason with her father. You need to pull yourself together, Pa, she finally snapped after finding him passed out on the porch for the second time. Mama wouldn't want this. James Turner looked at his daughter through bloodshot eyes. Your mama wouldn't want to be dead either, but here we are. This has to stop, Hannah insisted. The ranch is failing. The men are ready to quit. I can't keep teaching and running things here too. Then don't, her father said bluntly. Go back to town, marry that deputy who's been sniffing around you, leave an old man to his misery. Hannah recoiled as if slapped. Is that what you think I want, to abandon you? James took another swig from his bottle. It's what everyone does eventually, girl. Your mother promised she'd never leave me, and look what happened. She didn't choose to die, Pa. Doesn't matter. Gone is gone. He stumbled to his feet. Do what you want with the ranch. I don't much care anymore. Hannah returned to town with a heavy heart, torn between duty to her father and the realization that she couldn't save him from himself. She was crossing the street to the boarding house when she heard hoofbeats. The posse was returning. Her heart leapt to her throat as she scanned the dusty, tired men for Adam's familiar figure. When she spotted him riding beside Sheriff Wilson, relief flooded through her so strongly that her knees nearly buckled. The men dismounted in front of the sheriff's office. Hannah stood frozen, wanting to run to Adam but unsure of her welcome after their last conversation. He looked exhausted, his clothes filthy, a dark stubble covering his jaw. But he was alive and apparently unharmed. Sheriff Wilson noticed her first. Miss Turner, he called. You'll be pleased to know we caught those rustlers. Won't be bothering the county's ranchers anymore. Adam turned at the sheriff's words, his eyes finding Hannah's. For a moment, his expression remained guarded, then something in his face softened. Miss Turner, he acknowledged with a slight nod. Deputy Nathans, she replied formally, though her heart was racing. I'm glad to see you've returned safely. An awkward silence fell between them until Sheriff Wilson cleared his throat. Well, I need to get these prisoners locked up. Nathans, why don't you go get cleaned up? You look like something the cat dragged in. Adam nodded, still holding Hannah's gaze. I'll be along shortly, Sheriff. As the others dispersed, Adam approached Hannah, leading his tired horse. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched on his face, the dried blood on his sleeve. "You're hurt," she said, reaching for his arm. "It's not mine," he assured her. One of the rustlers took a bullet. Relief washed through her, followed quickly by guilt. "Adam, I'm so sorry for what I said before you left. I was tired and worried, but that's no excuse." Adam's expression remained serious. "You weren't wrong, Hannah. I haven't given you any reason to believe I'd stay." He glanced around the busy street. "Can we talk somewhere more private?" "After I've had a chance to clean up," Hannah nodded, hope and apprehension warring in her chest. "Mrs. Peterson's parlor will be empty this time of day. She visits her sister on Thursdays." "Give me an hour," Adam said. That hour felt like the longest of Hannah's life. She paced the small parlor, rearranging flowers and straightening cushions until Mrs. Peterson's cat fled in annoyance. When the knock finally came, Hannah had to force herself to walk, not run, to the door. Adam stood on the porch, freshly bathed and shaved, his auburn hair still damp. He changed into clean clothes, and without the dust of the trail, Hannah could see the shadows of exhaustion under his eyes. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. Adam removed his hat as he entered, turning it nervously in his hands. "Thank you for seeing me. Would you like some tea or coffee?" Hannah offered, suddenly unsure of herself. "No, thank you." Adam took a deep breath. "Hannah, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 5 days about what you said about my life, about us." Hannah's heart skipped a beat. Us, if there could be an us. Adam set his hat aside and took a step closer. "You were right that I've never put down roots anywhere. I've always been passing through, never staying long enough to form attachments. It was easier that way after my father died. No connections meant no loss." Hannah remained silent, hardly daring to breathe. "But then I met you," Adam continued, his voice softening. "Standing under that oak tree with your mother's Bible, so strong even in your grief, and something changed for me, Hannah. For the first time in my life, I found myself thinking about staying in one place, building something permanent." Hope bloomed in Hannah's chest. "Adam, please let me finish before I lose my nerve." He took her hands in his. "I love you, Hannah Turner. I think I've loved you since that first day, though it took me some time to admit it to myself. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you. Here in Mineral Park or wherever you want to go." Tears sprang to Hannah's eyes. "Do you mean that, about staying?" "I do." Adam's hazel eyes were steady on hers. "Sheriff Wilson has offered me a permanent position. The town council approved it yesterday while we were gone, and I've been saving my wages. Not enough for anything grand, but enough to start something of our own." Hannah felt as if her heart might burst. "I love you too, Adam. I think I've been fighting it because losing my mother showed me how painful love can be when it's taken away. But these past 5 days, not knowing if you were safe." Her voice broke. "I realized that not loving you would hurt far more than losing you ever could." Adam's face lit with a joy that transformed his tired features. He pulled her gently into his arms, giving her every opportunity to step away. When she came willingly, he lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss so tender it brought fresh tears to her eyes. "I should have done that a long time ago," he murmured when they finally broke apart. Hannah laughed softly. "Better late than never, Deputy Nathans." Adam sobered slightly. "There's still the matter of your father and the ranch. I won't pretend I have all the answers, but whatever you decide, we'll face it together." Hannah nodded, resting her head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt something like peace stealing over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't face them alone. The news of Hannah Turner and Adam Nathan's engagement spread through Mineral Park faster than a desert wildfire. Most people received it with pleasure. Hannah was well liked, and Adam had proven himself a capable and fair-minded deputy during his months in town. Not everyone was so pleased, however. James Turner, when informed of his daughter's engagement during one of his rare sober moments, responded with a bitterness that cut Hannah to the quick. "So you're abandoning the ranch after all," he said flatly. "Your mother would be disappointed." "I'm not abandoning anything, Pa," Hannah replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Adam and I want to help with the double T, but you need to want our help." James snorted derisively. "What does a lawman know about running cattle, and what does my daughter know about being a lawman's wife? Your mother never would have married a man who strapped on a gun every morning." Hannah felt Adam tense beside her but was grateful when he remained silent, allowing her to handle her father. "Mama married the man she loved," Hannah said quietly, "just as I'm doing. And she would want me to be happy even if you don't." The barb hit home. James flinched, then turned away. "Do what you want, you always have." It was a painful encounter, but not an unexpected one. As they rode back to town, Adam tried to reassure her. "He'll come around, Hannah. Grief and whiskey are a potent combination, but underneath it all, he loves you." Hannah wasn't so certain. "I'm not sure there's anything left of the father I knew. Sometimes I think he died with my mother." "Then we'll keep trying until we find him again," Adam said simply. This quiet determination was one of the many reasons Hannah had fallen in love with him. While he could be formidable when the situation called for it, as the captured rustlers had discovered, his natural inclination was toward patience and understanding. As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures to the Arizona desert, Hannah and Adam began planning their life together. They decided to marry in October, giving them time to prepare, and Hannah hoped for her father to accept the inevitable. Adam continued his duties as deputy while helping at the Double T whenever he could spare the time. To Hannah's surprise, he proved quite adept with cattle, having worked on ranches during his younger years. "You never mentioned you had ranching experience," she said one evening as they sat on Mrs. Peterson's porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Adam smiled. "You never asked. I've done a bit of everything over the years, ranching, mining, even tried my hand at storekeeping for a while." "Is that why you became a lawman?" "Because you couldn't settle on anything else." Adam considered the question. "Partly maybe, but mostly it was because of my father. After he was killed, I wanted to make a difference. Protect people who couldn't protect themselves." He glanced at her. "Does that disappoint you?" Hannah shook her head. "No, it makes me proud, but I worry about you facing danger every day. Mineral Park isn't exactly a den of iniquity," Adam pointed out with a smile. "Most days, my biggest challenge is breaking up arguments at the saloon or chasing off Mrs. Henderson's goat when it escapes." Hannah laughed, but her concern wasn't entirely banished. "The rustlers weren't harmless, and there will be others." Adam took her hand. "I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me, Hannah, but I can promise I'll never take unnecessary risks. I have too much to live for now." As their wedding day approached, Hannah found herself increasingly torn between joy in her future with Adam and sorrow over her father's continued decline. Miguel reported that James rarely left the house anymore, leaving the running of the ranch entirely in the foreman's hands. "We can delay the wedding," Adam suggested when he saw how the situation weighed on her. "Give your father more time." Hannah shook her head firmly. "No. I won't let Pa's grief control our lives. We move forward with or without his blessing." 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. Hannah was teaching when Sheriff Wilson appeared at the schoolhouse door, his expression grave. One look at his face, and she knew something terrible had happened. "It's your father," the sheriff said gently. "There was a fire at the ranch house." Hannah's blood ran cold. "Is he?" "He's alive, but badly injured. The doctor's with him now." Adam, who had been on patrol, met them at the Double T, his face grim with concern. The ranch house was a smoldering ruin, only the stone chimney still standing amid the charred remains. The ranch hands had formed a bucket line from the well, dousing the embers to prevent the fire from spreading to the other buildings. "Doctor." Morris emerged from the bunkhouse where James had been taken, his expression somber. "He's conscious, but the burns are severe, and he's breathed in a lot of smoke." "Will he live?" Hannah asked, her voice barely a whisper. The doctor hesitated. "It's too soon to say. The next 24 hours will be critical. He's asking for you." Hannah entered the bunkhouse, the smell of scorched flesh and medicinal ointments assaulting her senses. Her father lay on a narrow bed, much of his body covered in bandages. His face was relatively unscathed, but his hands and arms had suffered the worst of the burns. "Pa," she said softly, kneeling beside the bed. James turned his head slightly, his eyes cloudy with pain and the laudanum the doctor had administered. "Hannah," his voice was a rasp. "The house." "Don't worry about the house, it can be rebuilt, your mother's things." He whispered, Hannah's heart constricted. "Some things may have survived, we'll look once the embers cool." James closed his eyes briefly. My fault, knocked over a lamp, was drinking. Hush now, just rest. Hannah took a clean cloth and gently wiped her father's brow. The doctor says you need to save your strength. James caught her wrist with his less injured hand. Listen to me, been a fool, treating you badly, wasting away while you tried to hold everything together. Pa, please, no. Need to say it. Proud of you, girl. Your mother would be too, that young man of yours. James paused, struggling for breath. He's a good man, better than your old father deserves. Tears streamed down Hannah's face. You're going to be fine, Pa. You'll walk me down the aisle in 2 weeks. A ghost of a smile crossed James's cracked lips. Would like that, but if not, tell your deputy he has my blessing. His eyes drifted closed. So tired now. Rest, Pa. I'll be right here. Hannah remained at her father's side through the night, spelling Adam and Miguel, who insisted on helping. By morning, James's fever had risen alarmingly, and Dr. Morris's expression grew increasingly concerned. The burns themselves might have been survivable, he told Hannah privately, but the smoke damage to his lungs, combined with years of hard drinking. His body simply doesn't have the strength to fight. Hannah refused to accept it. There must be something more we can do. The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Make him comfortable. Talk to him. Even if he seems unconscious, he may still hear you. By noon, James had slipped into unconsciousness. Hannah sat beside him, holding his unburned hand, talking softly about her childhood, about memories of better days at the Double T when her mother was alive and her father smiled easily. Adam brought her mother's Bible, salvaged relatively intact from the ruins of the house. Miguel found it in the front room. It must have been protected by falling debris. Hannah clutched the familiar leather volume, its edges now singed but the pages mostly intact. Thank you. She looked up at Adam, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. Will you read to him? Like you read to me that first day, Adam nodded, taking the Bible and sitting opposite Hannah. He turned to Psalm 23, his deep voice steady as he read words of comfort that had sustained countless generations through their darkest hours. James Turner died just before sunset, with his daughter holding his hand and Adam reading from Elizabeth Turner's Bible. His passing was peaceful, the pained lines of his face smoothing out as he took his final breath. Hannah wept then, deep, racking sobs that seemed torn from the depths of her soul. Adam set aside the Bible and moved to her side, gathering her into his arms, letting her cry until exhaustion overtook her. The following days passed in a blur. The town rallied around Hannah, bringing food, offering condolences, and helping with funeral arrangements. Adam rarely left her side, a steady presence through her second devastating loss in as many months. The wedding was postponed indefinitely, though Adam assured Hannah he would wait as long as she needed. Our love isn't going anywhere, he promised. Take the time you need to grieve. A week after the funeral, Hannah returned to the ranch. The remains of the house had been cleared away, and Miguel had started preparations for rebuilding, assuming Hannah would want to continue her father's legacy. She walked through the ruins, picking up small artifacts of her family's life, a bent fork, the metal handle of her mother's favorite teapot, a scorched picture frame with the photograph somehow preserved inside. An image of her parents on their wedding day, young and smiling, with no inkling of the hardships that lay ahead. Adam found her sitting on a charred beam, staring at the photograph. They loved each other very much, Hannah said without looking up, even when things were difficult. Even when the ranch was struggling and Mama missed her family back east, they chose each other every day. Adam sat beside her. Like we choose each other. Hannah nodded, finally meeting his gaze. The ranch is mine now, all of it. Miguel says many of the hands will stay on if I want to continue. And do you want to continue? Hannah looked around at the land that had been her home for all of her 22 years. The rolling scrubland dotted with mesquite and oak, the distant mountains, the wide open sky. It was beautiful and harsh, demanding and rewarding in equal measure. I don't know, she admitted. Teaching is my passion, but this place, it's part of me, part of them. She gestured to the photograph. Adam considered her words carefully. What if it didn't have to be one or the other? What do you mean? The schoolhouse needs repairs. The town council has been putting it off for years. What if we built a new one, here on the ranch? Hannah looked at him in surprise. A A school on a cattle ranch. Adam warmed to his idea. Why not? There are children at the outlying ranches who can't make it into town every day. If the school were here, they could attend. We could even offer boarding for those from the furthest ranches. But how would I manage both? Teaching and the ranch. Miguel knows cattle better than most men in the county. Let him continue as foreman with a share of the profits. You focus on the school and I'll help with both when my duties allow. The idea took root in Hannah's imagination. We could build the house first, something simple but large enough for our future, and then the school nearby. Adam smiled, seeing the spark returning to her eyes. Our future, huh? How many little Nathans are you planning on, Miss Turner? Hannah blushed. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Well, I have, Adam admitted. I see at least 2 or 3, all with their mother's spirit and determination. And their father's kindness, Hannah added softly. Adam took her hand. Does this mean you're ready to set a new wedding date? Hannah nodded. I am. My parents would want me to move forward, to build the life they always wished for me, a life filled with love and purpose. 2 weeks later, Hannah Turner became Hannah Nathans in a simple ceremony in the town church. She wore her mother's locket and carried the Bible that had brought her and Adam together. Pastor Miller spoke of new beginnings rising from ashes, of faith sustaining through the darkest times, and of love that conquers all obstacles. The town turned out in force to celebrate the union of their schoolteacher and deputy. Even Sheriff Wilson shed a tear, though he later claimed it was just dust in his eye. As Hannah and Adam shared their first dance as husband and wife in the town hall, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The grief was still there, it would always be there in some form, but now it was balanced by joy and hope for the future. Happy. Adam asked, holding her close as they swayed to the music. More than I ever thought possible, Hannah replied honestly. It's strange how life works. If my mother hadn't died, if I hadn't been crying under that oak tree with her Bible, we still would have found each other, Adam said with certainty. Some things are meant to be. Hannah rested her head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. I believe you're right, Deputy Nathans. Some things are indeed meant to be. The construction of their new home began the following week. Adam had saved considerably more than Hannah realized, and with the ranch's resources, they were able to build a sturdy, comfortable house with plenty of room for their future family. Hannah insisted on a large front porch where they could watch the sunset together, just as her parents had done. By spring of 1877, the house was complete, and work had begun on the schoolhouse nearby. Word spread about Hannah's plans, and parents from outlying areas began inquiring about enrollment for their children. Adam continued his duties as deputy, riding out each morning and returning each evening to Hannah. Sometimes he joined Miguel and the hands when extra help was needed with the cattle, proving himself as capable on horseback as he was with a badge. One evening in late April, as they sat on their new porch watching the sunset, Hannah placed Adam's hand on her still flat stomach. We might need to add another bedroom sooner than we planned, she said softly. Adam's expression transformed from confusion to wonder in an instant. Hannah, are you saying? She nodded, her eyes shining. Dr. Morris confirmed it yesterday. We'll have a little one joining us before Christmas. Adam gathered her into his arms, his joy too great for words. When he finally found his voice, it was thick with emotion. I never thought I could be this happy. You've given me everything I never knew I wanted: a home, a purpose, a family. We've given each other those things, Hannah corrected gently, and this baby will have the best of both of us. As the months passed, Hannah's body changed with her growing child. She continued teaching in town until the new schoolhouse was completed in August, just as her condition was becoming too obvious to ignore. The school on the Double T officially opened in September, with 15 students from ranches throughout the county. 3 children from the furthest ranches boarded during the week in a small dormitory attached to the schoolhouse. Hannah thrived in her expanded role, her natural gift for teaching blossoming in the school she had helped design. Even as her pregnancy advanced, she maintained her schedule, though Adam insisted she take frequent rests. The baby needs you strong, he would say, bringing her tea on the porch during afternoon breaks. "The baby is strong," Hannah would reply, placing his hand on her stomach to feel the vigorous kicking of their child. "Takes after its father." On a cold December morning with snow dusting the distant mountains, Hannah went into labor. Adam, who had been nervously anticipating this moment for weeks, nearly wore a path in the floorboards as he paced outside their bedroom where Dr. Morris and two neighboring women attended Hannah. After hours of labor, a lusty cry announced the arrival of their firstborn, a son with a shock of auburn hair like his father's and eyes that promised to be as dark and expressive as his mother's. "James Adam Nathans," Hannah whispered when Adam was finally allowed to enter and see his wife and child. "After my father and you." Adam, overwhelmed by the tiny perfect being in his wife's arms, could only nod as tears streamed unashamedly down his face. "He's beautiful, Hannah. Perfect." "Would you like to hold your son?" Hannah asked, smiling tiredly. With trembling hands, Adam took the swaddled infant, marveling at how someone so small could so completely capture his heart in an instant. "Hello, James," he whispered. "I'm your pa." The baby yawned and settled contentedly against Adam's chest, as if he'd always known this was where he belonged. Later that evening, as Hannah rested with the baby beside her, Adam retrieved Elizabeth Turner's Bible from its place of honor on their bedside table. The leather cover was still singed from the fire, but the pages remained intact, a testament to resilience and endurance. "I think we should read to him," Adam suggested. "Start a tradition like your mother did with you." Hannah nodded, her heart full. "What verse shall we start with?" Adam turned to the psalm he had read to her that first day beneath the oak tree, when she was a grieving daughter and he was a stranger offering comfort. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit," he read softly. Hannah reached for his hand. "We've both known what it is to be brokenhearted, but look at what grew from that pain, this love, this family, this life we've built together." Adam pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then to his son's downy head. "A testament to faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love." As winter gave way to spring, little James grew stronger each day. Hannah gradually resumed her teaching duties, often with the baby nestled in a basket beside her desk. The students adored their teacher's son, and more than one of the older girls volunteered to hold him when Hannah needed her hands free. Adam's responsibilities expanded as well. Sheriff Wilson, recognizing his deputy's intelligence and commitment, increasingly relied on Adam to handle administrative duties, especially as the sheriff's rheumatism worsened with age. "You'll be wearing this star before long," Wilson remarked one day, tapping his badge. "Town council's already mentioned it to me. They're impressed with how you've handled things." Adam considered the possibility thoughtfully. "I'd be honored, Sheriff, but my family comes first now." "As it should," Wilson agreed, "but from what I've seen, you manage both just fine." The Double T prospered under Miguel's management, with Adam contributing strategic decisions and occasional labor. Hannah used some of the profits to expand the school, adding another teacher to help with the growing number of students. In the spring of 1879, Hannah discovered she was expecting their second child. James, now a sturdy toddler with his father's curiosity and his mother's stubborn streak, patted his mother's still flat stomach with solemn interest when told about the coming baby. "Baby?" he asked, his vocabulary growing daily. "Yes, sweetheart, a baby brother or sister for you," Hannah explained. James considered this information gravely before pronouncing sister with surprising certainty. Adam laughed, swinging his son up onto his shoulders. "We'll see, partner. Either way, you'll be a fine big brother." James proved to be right. In November of 1879, Elizabeth Beth Nathans joined the family, a delicate beauty with her mother's features, and to everyone's surprise, a head full of dark curls that matched neither parent. "She takes after my grandmother," Hannah explained, admiring her daughter's uniqueness. "My mother always said I would have had her curls if I'd been patient enough to wait." As their family grew, so did their connections to the community. The school on the Double T became a gathering place not just for education, but for social events. Hannah organized holiday celebrations, reading circles, and musical evenings that brought together families from throughout the county. Adam was officially appointed sheriff of Mineral Park in 1880, following Wilson's retirement. The position brought greater responsibility, but also increased stability for the family. Adam made it a point to be home for dinner each evening, maintaining the balance between duty and family that was so important to both him and Hannah. Through the years, Hannah kept her mother's Bible close. It became a family heirloom, its pages marked with notations of births, milestones, and special moments. Each night, either Hannah or Adam would read from it to their children, continuing the tradition Elizabeth Turner had begun decades earlier. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met, Adam surprised Hannah by taking her to the oak tree where he had found her crying over her mother's Bible. "Do you remember what I said to you that day?" he asked, taking her hands in his. Hannah smiled, the memory clear despite the passage of time. "You asked if you could read a verse with me." Adam nodded. "Best question I ever asked. It led me to you, to our children, to this life I never dreamed I could have." He pulled a small package from his pocket. "I have something for you." Hannah unwrapped the paper to find a delicate silver bookmark, engraved with the first verse he had ever read to her. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." "Oh, Adam," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "It's perfect." "Just like you," he replied, gathering her into his arms. "Perfect for me in every way." They stood together under the oak tree, the desert stretching around them, the ranch and schoolhouse visible in the distance. Their children waited at home with Miguel and his wife, who had become like family over the years. The life they had built together wasn't without challenges. There had been droughts and difficulties, illness and setbacks, but through it all, their love had only deepened and strengthened. "I have something to tell you too," Hannah said, her eyes shining with secret joy. Adam looked at her questioningly. "What is it?" "James and Beth will have another sibling by next summer. Dr. Morris confirmed it yesterday." Adam's face lit with wonder, the same expression he'd worn when she told him about James, and then Beth. Some things never changed his love for her, his joy in their family, his steadfast presence through all of life's moments, both difficult and beautiful. "I love you, Hannah Nathans," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "More today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "And I love you, Sheriff Nathans," she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "Thank you for reading that verse with me all those years ago." As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of gold and purple, Adam and Hannah walked hand in hand back toward their home, their hearts full of gratitude for the life they had built from grief and loss, a testament to the enduring power of faith, hope, and most of all, love. In the years that followed, the Nathans family continued to thrive. Their third child, another boy they named Thomas, arrived in the summer of 1881 with his father's easygoing nature and his mother's love of books. The children grew up in the nurturing environment of the Double T, dividing their time between ranch chores, schoolwork, and adventures in the surrounding countryside. James, the eldest, showed a natural talent for ranching from an early age, spending hours with Miguel learning the business that would someday be his inheritance. Beth developed her mother's passion for teaching, often gathering younger children to play school on the porch. Thomas, the youngest, revealed an artistic bent, sketching the desert landscapes and wildlife with remarkable skill for one so young. Hannah's school grew in reputation, attracting families to Mineral Park despite the declining silver industry. Some even relocated specifically so their children could attend. By 1885, the school had 3 full-time teachers and over 40 students ranging from 5 to 16 years of age. Adam's tenure as sheriff brought a period of stability and justice to the county. He was firm but fair, more interested in preventing trouble than punishing wrongdoers. Under his watch, Mineral Park navigated the transition from mining boom town to ranching community with relatively little strife. Through it all, Elizabeth Turner's Bible remained at the center of family life. The children knew the story of how it had brought their parents together, how it had survived the fire that claimed their grandfather's life, and how its words had comforted generations of their family through trials and tribulations. On quiet evenings, the family would gather in the parlor. Hannah or Adam would read a passage while the children listened, sometimes asking questions that led to thoughtful discussions about faith, morality, and life's purpose. As they grew older, the children took turns reading as well, each developing their own relationship with the timeless words. The 10th anniversary of Hannah and Adam's wedding found them hosting a celebration at the Double T that brought together nearly everyone in the county. Tables were set up beneath the oak trees, with lanterns casting a warm glow as dusk fell. Music, laughter, and conversation filled the air as friends and neighbors shared in the couple's milestone. Late in the evening, Hannah found a moment of quiet with her mother's Bible, sitting on the porch steps away from the festivities. She ran her fingers over the worn leather, touching the singed edges that reminded her of all they had overcome. Adam found her there, 2 glasses of punch in hand. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Nathans." Hannah accepted the glass with a smile. "I was just thinking about Mama and Pa. Wishing they could see all this: the ranch, the school, our children. How happy we are." Adam sat beside her, his shoulder warm against hers. "I believe they can see, and I believe they're proud of the life you've built from what they left you." "That we've built," Hannah corrected, leaning against him. "I couldn't have done any of it without you," Adam chuckled. "Oh, I think you'd have managed just fine. You're the strongest person I know, Hannah Nathans." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but I wouldn't have wanted to." Life is sweeter when shared with someone you love. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the celebration continue. Their children darted between groups of adults: James, now 12, tall and responsible; Beth, 10, her dark curls bouncing as she laughed; and Thomas, 8, observing everything with an artist's eye. "Did you ever imagine this?" Hannah asked. "That day when you found me crying under the oak tree?" Adam shook his head. "I hoped I might see you again. I never dared dream we'd build all this together." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Every day with you is a blessing I never take for granted." As the years passed, the Nathans family weathered their share of storms. The drought of 1887 nearly devastated the Double T, but Adam's foresight in diversifying their interests and Hannah's income from the school helped them survive when other ranches failed. Beth contracted scarlet fever at 15, giving the family anxious weeks before she fully recovered. James broke his leg in a riding accident, and Thomas struggled with persistent asthma that sometimes kept him confined during dust storms. Through each challenge, they turned to each other and to the faith that had sustained them from the beginning. The Bible that had brought them together continued to provide wisdom and comfort, its pages now bearing the fingerprints of multiple generations. By the dawn of the new century, Mineral Park had evolved from the rough mining town of Hannah's youth to a respectable community centered around ranching, commerce, and education. The Double T, under James's increasingly capable management, had grown to be one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. The school Hannah had founded was now a proper academy, with dormitories housing students from as far away as Phoenix. Adam, his auburn hair now streaked with silver, remained sheriff until 1902, when he decided to step down in favor of his deputy. At 53, he was still robust and active, but the appeal of spending more time with Hannah and helping with the ranch and school had grown stronger with each passing year. Hannah, whose dark hair had likewise begun to show threads of silver, continued to oversee the academy, though she had gradually delegated day-to-day teaching responsibilities to younger instructors, including Beth, who had returned from college in the East with new ideas and methods. Their children's paths reflected the solid foundation their parents had provided. James married Maria Vasquez, Miguel's niece, combining 2 families whose histories were intertwined with the Double T. They had 4 children who filled the ranch with a new generation of laughter and energy. Beth, after completing her education, returned to teach at her mother's academy. She married Robert Taylor, a young doctor who had set up practice in Mineral Park, and they built a home near the school where they raised their 3 children. Thomas, whose asthma had prevented him from following his brother into ranching, developed his artistic talents into a successful career. His paintings of Western landscapes hung in galleries as far away as New York and San Francisco. He married later than his siblings, finding his match in Catherine Williams, a writer who had come west seeking material for her novels. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Hannah and Adam gathered their extended family, 3 children, their spouses, and 11 grandchildren at the Double T for a celebration. The original oak tree, now older but still strong, provided shade for the gathering. Adam had a special gift for Hannah, a handmade cabinet to house her mother's Bible, crafted from wood salvaged from the remains of her parents' home. The Bible itself had been carefully restored by a bookbinder in Phoenix, its singed edges preserved, but its binding strengthened to ensure it would last for generations to come. "So our grandchildren's grandchildren can hear the story," Adam explained as he presented it to her, "of how a cowboy found a crying woman under an oak tree and how reading a verse together changed both their lives forever." Hannah, her eyes bright with tears of joy, traced her fingers over the intricate carving on the cabinet's door, an oak tree with spreading branches. "It's beautiful, Adam, perfect." That evening, with their family gathered around them in the home they had built together, Hannah opened the Bible to the verse that had started it all. Adam's voice, still strong despite his years, joined hers as they read together. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." As Hannah looked around at the faces of those she loved, her steadfast husband, their accomplished children, their bright-eyed grandchildren, she thought of her mother and father, of the hardships and joys that had shaped her life's journey, and of the faith that had sustained her through it all. From grief had come healing. From loss had come abundance. From a chance meeting and a shared verse had come a legacy of love that would endure long after she and Adam were gone. And in that moment, surrounded by the family they had created together, Hannah knew with absolute certainty that this love, this life, this legacy was the greatest blessing she could have ever imagined, far exceeding the dreams of the broken-hearted young woman who had once cried over her mother's Bible beneath an oak tree in the Arizona desert.